we go, it's midday. We'll kick off and hopefully other people will join us. Thank you everybody for attending online today. I'm Jennifer Rank and I work for Christchurch City Council. I'm one of the project managers looking after this project. With us today we have the team from Isaac's Construction who Council have awarded the work for the Kaha Surrounding Streets project. So they're going to talk to you today about who they are and then talk you through some of the impacts that you're going to be seeing on the streets surrounding Kaha. So I'll pass you over to Quinton from Isaac's, who will talk you through a bit about Isaac's.
G'day, I'm Quinton. I'm the contracting manager for Isaac Construction. So I'll give you a little bit of a background about who we are as a business and what we do here in the city, and then I'll hand over to back to Jenny and Ross to talk about the project itself, and then we'll hand over to Dan to talk through some of our specifics around the sequencing, meet the team, and some of the key information for you. So to kick off, I'll start with company history and Isaac Conservation Wildlife Trust and who we are. So if we flick over to the next slide. So Isaac Construction, we've been established in Christchurch City for over 70 years now, coming up 75 years, established by Sir Neil and Lady Diana Isaac, our original founders on the screen there. So they started the business in 1950, and we're situated out where they started, really behind the airport, just off McLean's Island Road. We've got our quarry operations and our historic base out there. So Isaac Construction is the entity in the business that's been awarded the Kaha contract. We'll be the ones delivering it, but ultimately we're owned now by the Isaac Conservation and Wildlife Trust. That's a trust that Lady Diana and Sir Neil originally started back in 1977, and it's evolved from there to become the Isaac Conservation Wildlife Trust as it is today. So I'll talk a little bit about what we're about, what our ownership model is about, and what we do in the for good space. So if we flick over to the next one. So essentially the Isaac Conservation and Wildlife Trust, I'll go Isaac Construction, operating in Christchurch primarily for the last 70 years, and now operating right across the South Island of New Zealand, across 5 different bases, with Canterbury being our historic home. We've delivered a lot of construction projects here over the years, and particularly with Christchurch City Council being one of our biggest customers. You would have seen us around the city before now, and we're looking forward to continuing that. The Isaac Trust model, our ownership model, exists really for 3 main pillars. So our the goals and the deliverables for the trust. So we have a wildlife breeding park. Essentially, the land that we've quarried out since 1950, we have remediated that into natural lakes, lagoons, and breeding centre, which is all closed to the public, and we have some private relationships with the Department of Conservation to essentially breed endangered species of bird. We do that down in our rehabilitated quarry. We employ out of the trust wildlife keepers, conservationists, landscapers, and maintenance people to maintain that area and work with the Department of Conservation to breed these endangered birds. We work with them to release them back into the wild, and a number of them are only around today in existence because of the influence and interaction that the Isaac Trust has had over the last sort of 25 to 30 years. So that's a really important, one of the really important arms of what the Isaac Conservation Trust does. The 2 other arms are we invest in education, so environmental and sustainability education, and that's in the shape of scholarships, master's level scholarships with Canterbury University, Lincoln University, Otago University, which we fund every year for students looking to further their education at master's level. And then the other arm is historic building conservation. We've got a heritage village out of McLean's Island Road there, where we've it's transported and rebuilt or maintained to the original state. About 16 buildings from around Canterbury, Christchurch and the wider Canterbury region. Includes a church, a jailhouse, old doctors, clinic, etc., etc. So they're the sort of three arms: fauna and flora conservation, historic building conservation, and the promotion of education in the wildlife and sustainability space. What we're about and who we are: we employ about 450 people. As I mentioned, we're based right across the South Island, Christchurch, Nelson, Dunedin, West Coast and Blenheim. We operate right across the range of civil construction, focusing on the horizontal space, services, three waters, roading and infrastructure, intersection rebuilds, etc. And we've got that pretty strong people-focused business. Historically we're a family-owned business, transitioned to ownership by the trust, and we try and maintain that family feel. A few notes about us there. Company values: promise safety first, create a better future, raise the bar, lead by example, and be well, do well. And I think that aligns pretty well with how we look to operate out there when we're delivering our projects. And we've worked pretty closely with Christchurch City Council in particular, with a strong focus on stakeholder management, looking after people, looking after road users, and delivering our projects collaboratively with the stakeholders that we're working around and alongside, obviously, Christchurch City Council. So hopefully you'll see that as we go out there and deliver this one. Right for our people, right for our customers, right by the environment. It sort of sums that up pretty succinctly. And I'll hand back to Ross to cover the Three Waters scope of the project for Te Kaha.
Thank you. Yes, if we can grab the next slide, thank you. So as it stands at the moment, the scope of the project as of today includes replacement of council's water supply infrastructure and council's wastewater or sewer infrastructure. And on the map up there, you can see the blue lines, and that indicates where we will be replacing those two waters, if you will, around the new stadium site. We've got Barbados Street on the east side there, from Gloucester Street down to Ferry Road, Madras Street from Hereford Street down to Senasif Street, a section of Churm Street and a section of Litchfield Street. We've also got a couple of other little spots, Ash Street and a little bit on Cashel Street. So we'll be replacing the wastewater and water supply in all of those areas, not both of them in every area, but generally speaking in most of those areas. There's a couple of pictures there on the right of some pipes in poor condition, and the picture on the left shows sort of a typical wastewater pipe installation. That picture shows a wastewater pipe being installed, which is a bit deeper than the ones that we will be installing around here, but it's a very similar idea and sort of shows you how far below the ground some of this stuff can be. There's two main reasons why we're doing the wastewater and water supply upgrade. The first is that a lot of the pipes are well over 100 years old. Some of them are up to 140 years old. They're at the end of their life, and they need to be replaced. So some of the wastewater pipes were installed in around the 1880s, and we've got some water supply pipes which were installed in the early 1900s, I think around 1904. So we've got some very old infrastructure which is going to get replaced. And the second main reason why we're replacing this stuff at the moment is obviously we need to upgrade it, the capacity and that for the new stadium which is going in. So we need to have bigger pipes to take more wastewater away, and we need to have bigger water supply pipes to supply more fresh water. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's the water and wastewater component of the works that will be getting underway shortly. And I think Jenny will now talk a bit more about the transport aspects.
So just to give everybody a bit of an update, obviously when we went for consultation on this project to the community, there was two elements. There was the water and wastewater side of things that needs to be done, but there was obviously the transport upgrade works that we heavily consulted on. At this stage, we are not proceeding with those works until we get a funding decision from NZTA. When the new government came in, they put a hold on approving our funding application, which goes towards subsidising the works that we do for transport. So until a decision is made around the funding, we're not proceeding with the transport works, but that's not to say that we won't in the future. So the map there shows the extent of the works if we were to continue with the transport works in the course of the next few months. And obviously our objective is always to try and achieve a one-pass approach and to do these works ahead of the opening of the arena. So at this stage, it's just to press pause on those works, but we'll be updating you as soon as we can on when that work will be commencing. And that work will be undertaken by Isaacs as well, if and when that happens. Next slide. Oh, it's Dan.
Okay, thank you. I'm Dan Lucas. I'm the project manager for the works. So just to the next slide there, please. So the site does cover a large area, and to make it more manageable, we tend to slice it into pieces. So this map demonstrates how we plan to deliver the works and define the work. So on the west zone includes Madras Street, Litchfield, Ash and Casual, and the east zone has Barbados Street and Chewham Street. So on each side of that map there, there's some individuals. They are the teams that are delivering each of those sites, and across the bottom are the individuals that will represent the entire site. Just next slide, please. So stakeholder liaison is one of the key aspects to our delivery. Our stakeholder advisors are there to really be the voice for the public during our project planning. So I'll admit that we often get a bit of tunnel vision in terms of building the works, and having those individuals there that are entirely accountable for the stakeholders and having them involved in our planning meetings is really important to us. We do really encourage the public, stakeholders to be speaking to these people and tell us what's important to you so that we can incorporate it into our planning. We are a horizontal construction project, so what that brings is more flexibility than you may see in a vertical construction project. So obviously if you're building a building, you need to start at the bottom and build to the top. Because we're building horizontally, we do actually have a lot more flexibility. So once we understand the constraints that stakeholders have, we can work to accommodating that as much as possible. But again, we just really, really encourage you to speak up to us and tell us what's important. We do have to balance the needs of stakeholders versus the speed of the program. So in all honesty, when we are there and on the road, as you'll know, we bring disruption. So for us, it's important to get complete as fast as possible. And we do need to balance that disruption versus overall speed. For wastewater and water upgrades, unfortunately, the public get very little visual progress. So it will feel like there's a lot of impact for not much change, because obviously all of that infrastructure is underground. The main visual progress you'll get is just our excavators and trucks and so on moving down the road. Working in the central city is particularly complex when it comes to the different types of stakeholders we're dealing with. So we have daytime businesses, we have residents who obviously sleep is really important too, and obviously things like hotels and accommodation businesses. So attempting to balance our working hours can be complex, but we will be fully transparent with that and talk you through the reasons for the different hours that we are working. We have a contractual requirement to maintain your access. So yes, the pipes will cross your driveways, they will cross your doorways at times. So we will work with you to come up with the right time and the right access options that we can maintain. As Jenny talked about, there's a bit of an unknown there with the transport scope. if and when that comes on, it will come on reasonably quickly. So we will circle back and talk about what that next load of scope and next load of impact may bring. And lastly, obviously, the most important thing again is the sooner we know about any potential issue that you have, the sooner we can take steps to resolving it. So please don't be shy about coming forward about anything that you may have. So the sequencing of work, so we're actually out there now doing some non-invasive radar work. So this is all about attempting to find the services that are in the ground now. Next week we'll be into potholing and trying to visually identify those services. As that potholing is complete and we can finalise the alignments of some of these pipelines, and when I say finalise, we're talking moving it a few millimetres here or there to avoid existing services that are in the ground, we can then progress into the physical works. And each one of those bars represents a different street where we will be working on the mixture of wastewater and water. And next slide, please. Okay, so traffic management. So I talked about in the last slide, we're currently out doing radar work and we'll be potholing next week. Although the pipelines may move only a small amount, that can actually have quite an impact on our traffic management plans and exactly where can we fit our diggers and trucks and so on, and where can we still fit the lane of traffic. So we won't actually be able to 100% finalise those traffic management plans until we finalise that pipe alignment. It is most likely that most of those roads will be shut down to a single lane of traffic with parking restrictions at times. With our traffic management setups, we know through monitoring that we've done on other projects, the more consistent we can keep our traffic management layout, the impact reduces. So that's as traffic gets used to the new layout of the road. So we do try to keep it as consistent as possible. We do expect congestion over the first couple of weeks once we lay that TM out. And again, that is about the traffic getting used to that impact that we've brought. But generally we see through monitoring those travel times that we do see that settle down over the first couple of weeks. When we're working on a long stretch of road like Barbados Street or Madras Street, we know from it the impacts that we bring. If we constantly change from 2 lanes to 1 lane to 2 lanes, it doesn't necessarily improve the impact or travel time that we're bringing. So particularly in Central City where we have a lot of businesses to service as well, our priority is actually opening the parking opposed to opening another lane until we can open it over that entire street. So our comms team will be really thorough in coming out and talking to you about when are we taking parks out, how long will they be out for, and when will we put them back in. And finally, cones, signs, and other devices. There is flexibility in exactly where they're positioned, and often stakeholders do have some frustrations about where they are. Please speak up to us about if there's a particular cone or a particular sign that's in an awkward position for you as a resident or a business, because often we can actually just adjust that slightly without too much issue. And then as we move into the actual work and the sequencing, on the next slide, please. So this is Barbados Street. So this demonstrates that we will have multiple crews working along the stretch of Barbados Street to start with. So we like to work with the flow of traffic. So we will start, each of these areas, we will start at the north end and head south. So that is heading with the direction of traffic. So one starting at Gloucester, one starting at Litchfield, and one starting at Chewham. That is a mixture of installing water pipes and wastewater pipes. And then as we move on to the next sequence, you can see we're just progressively working our way down the road and introducing a crew into Chewham Street. And this is the typical layout that you will see on Barbados Street. So the picture on the right is what we call the mid-block, so the areas between the intersections. We will try to keep those layouts at those extents for as long as we can, and then as we encroach closer to the intersections is when you'll start to see the setup on the left. Obviously, as we start to move into intersections, we start to disrupt more roads, more side roads, so that's where we endeavour to really do the setup that's within the intersection only when we absolutely need to, and then pull it out as soon as we've finished that work. And then as we progress into the Madras Street work, which will be being undertaken simultaneously, a slightly different approach over on Madras Street, and that is because we have less side roads that the pipes need to go back up into to tie in. What we've worked out is if we can put the pipes in that need to cross the road first, which is what this layout is showing, then as we progress into the next stage, we can set, on the next slide please, we can then set this team layout out for essentially the remainder of the duration. So this shows us setting up on the what I'll call the stadium side or the east side of Madras Street, and working with multiple crews down Madras Street in a similar fashion to Barbados, but obviously again working with the flow of traffic, we'll work from the southern end heading north. And then there is the introduction of Litchfield Street, which has a one-way system as well. So this is your typical layout of Madras Street. You can see a small gap there and some blue writing that says retained access. So that is how we work through maintaining access open to businesses. And as that crew works up, they'll kind of work halfway over the entranceway and then flip it, similar to what you saw with the intersection picture earlier. And then as we progress to the next slide, so this is an example of how we intend on laying out Litchfield Street. So obviously it's particularly complex on Litchfield Street to maintain the tram flow. The tram flows from west to east, and there's not a lot of room there to fit a lane of traffic and a tram. So that is really what dictates the direction of flow that we need to maintain for that one-way system. You'll see there, we're maintaining that loop around into Poplar, and our pipe work, interestingly, will actually be tunnelling under the tram lines. And finally, I mentioned there's a sewer upgrade to happen in both Cashel and Ash Street. Obviously, these streets were particularly constrained in terms of width and space available. So these are the areas that will require road closures. For Ash Street, you'll see there we work up to the crossroad and then flip it over. So it does maintain, I guess, 3/4 of the area open. And Cashel Street, we intend on closing from Manchester Street just to the extent of the sewer. That will still maintain access into Cashel Street from Madras Street. So the key takeaways really is, look, we can't change the work that is required, but we absolutely have flexibility in how we will deliver it. We can build aspects into our planning, but again, we just need to know what is important to you and how can we adapt for that. As Jenny talked about, as more stages are hopefully approved, we will need to react quickly. So our advisors will be back out to keep you informed and again, explore those things that are important. One request, I guess, from myself is please remember that the staff you see out on site are more often than not directed to be there. So they are told what we're doing, when we're doing it, and so on. They're not the decision makers. As I'm sure you've seen publicised, the amount of abuse that our road workers get these days is pretty distressing. So we really ask that if you do have any feedback, any questions, please just come through. You'll see a contact there at the bottom for Elizabeth, plenty of email addresses and so on. So yeah, please just remember that those guys on site are just doing what they're asked to do. And again, finally, please, above all else, we just want to hear from you. So yeah, if there's anything, please don't hesitate and to reach out. I think, sorry, I'm not sure whether we've actually received any questions, but yeah, we're now opening the floor to any questions that may come. Which we have nothing yet. So yeah, whether there's anything now or whether something comes to mind later, we're more than happy to come out and see you individually to talk through any impacts that you may be facing or concerns you have. But again, yeah, there's plenty of different email addresses or phone numbers to get hold of us, so please don't hesitate to reach out.
So we'll just give you a couple of seconds. If you have any questions, just pop it through on the channel available to you on the Zoom call. If not, just send an email through to the Let's Talk Now email address or the Isaac's address that was in the presentation, and we'll get back in touch with the answer to your question as soon as we can.
So we've just received a first question. How often do you expect to turn the water supply off?
So water connections are done. Sorry, I'll go back one step. Ross mentioned the pipework is over 100 years old in some places. So we do expect to find some surprises as we go down on these pipelines at the points that we need to connect. Each time we finish essentially a block, the intention is to connect that new pipe onto the old pipe. The process for that is that we request through council who review the water usage data, and they dictate to us the time that we can shut that down to connect on. The water is fed in a big loop, so often the actual shutdown area is very limited, and often it's sort of middle of the night after 10 p.m. and normally back on before 5 a.m. So, sorry, I probably can't answer you specifically at how many times, but hopefully that process helps explain.
I've got somebody's hand up there. Are we able to? Just see if we can allow the person with their hand up to talk. Is that a possibility?
Oh, I think that's probably then what this is. Is it, Renee, can you type your question in the Q&A section? Or you can unmute if you'd like to talk.
Hello, Ramon?
Yes, do you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Ah, nice, perfect. Thank you. Yes, I just have a question. I'm one of the project managers from Fletcher Living, and I have been sending an email to Daniel Squire, I think is the Zone 1 manager. We are starting a new 5-story building at the bottom of Rural Park, just on Litchfield corner with Hone Lane. My question is just because obviously we want to start in November with some excavation, and I think the ground improvement is supposed to start in January next year. But I would like, if it's possible, obviously to coordinate some lateral connections, the sprinkler pipes, those kind of services that need to go into Litchfield Street. So I probably will keep in contact, just give you a heads up, I probably will in contact with Daniel Spiro and just to coordinate some work with you guys, and we can just get our subcontractor when you are opening the streets. We just probably get our contractors to jump into there and do the connections, or maybe we can do it through you guys. I'm not sure about what's the best way to do that. But yeah, I just wanted to let you know if you have any issue with that.
Yeah, I'd say definitely just keep in touch with Dan Squire on that one. He's your best point of contact for liaising with Isaacs.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I will talk with him. And also when we start doing excavation in November, which is going to be only a week, we just talked to him about the best access to get the trucks in and out without disrupting your works. That's good. Okay. Nice, thank you. Thank you.
We also have a question here from Zach regarding access to your property. Yes, we will maintain access to your doorway. Just the actual route to get to the doorway may change just from time to time, but it'll all be signposted on how to get there.
Anybody else? So obviously there's no more questions that we've received, but if you do have anything you think after we've ended this call that you have a question, please send it through and we will get back to you as soon as we can with a response. So don't feel like today was your only opportunity. We're available all the time. So yeah, just send that through your query and we can get back to you. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today.